Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 25th meeting of the Waynesboro Area School District Board of Directors. We'll start today with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Ms. Kuzer, we have Mr. Smith's probably going to be late. Couple on Zoom. Let's do roll call, please.
Mrs. Miles,
Here.
Zimmerman,
Here.
Dr. Royer,
Here.
Mr. Marvin,
Here.
Sullivan,
Here.
right?
Here.
Courtney,
Here.
Here. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to say that it's with great sadness that we send our condolences to the family and friends of Lori Ray Stottlemyre Akers, who passed away on Friday. Lori was a physical education teacher at Fairview. She was also our current Teacher of the Year. Lori was a wonderful woman who loved her family, her husband Jeremy, daughters Madeline and Grace. She loved her friends. She loved her colleagues. She loved her students, and she also loved Jesus. And I think for those who knew her, they saw that exemplified in her life every day, the way that she cared about them. It caused them to admire, respect, and love her in return. She will be greatly missed. Rest in peace, Coach. Okay, on then to our first item tonight, which is our agenda. Dr. Klein, no changes, correct? Okay, motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, on to the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Questions about anything from last meeting? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Dr. Klein, Superintendent report.
All right, a couple of things here that I want to mention. First of all, Waynesboro's new bocce ball team beat Mechanicsburg today. So I wanted to share that our bocce ball team beat Mechanicsburg. So, so congratulations to our kids. So, the second thing is I want to kind of give you an update on some of our COVID numbers in the schools. We do have a spike there at Maui. We have 11 positive students at Maui. The total in the district is at 40 we've had in the past few days. So it aligns with what we see in the county. Staff, we have 13 positive staff members right now that have occurred this week. I believe that's correct. Who's it right? So Mrs. Kuzer, as you know, is our data person, keeping a lot of this for us, and we're grateful for that. But I want to give you an update on those numbers. And later on, you will see we'll need the reapproval of the health and safety plan, because that is required every 6 months in order to qualify for the ESSER fund, the ARP ESSER fund. We have to have that reapproved every 6 months. So just so you know, and you'll wonder why we bring it up every 6 months. That's why. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, tonight for public comment, we have Mrs. Dills, the only one who's requested to speak. So come on up, please. Even though you filled out the card, if you could just repeat your address.
That's fine. I'm Janet Dill, and I live at 13586 Pennersville Road. And I'm going to be very brief tonight. I think the storm last week kind of is what brought me here today. And I was just wondering if the board would consider creating a policy for days like we had last week with the extreme ice on the path coming from the middle school, that would allow for either a drop off or a pickup at the middle school, which would prevent, 800-900 children going down that icy hill. to the next school. So if that's something, I think in cases of extreme weather, just something that can be enacted very quickly to allow for that, because I know there were injuries. I know myself, I've already been at the health room 3 times for falls on that path this year. So if that's something you would consider, I know many of us parents would appreciate it.
Sure, we can look into that.
Mrs. Phil, could you elaborate exactly which path you're talking about?
I think it's primarily the first path. I know you labeled them north and south. I'm not sure what that
I think it's the
entails.
north you're
North,
talking
okay.
about.
Okay, but I think the problem is loose gravel. There are also some places where the pavement is broken, and I'm not blaming this on anyone. I mean, this is just nature, and and I know the crews are trying the best they can. But on the day that you have that slope going down, the path is really only wide enough for 2 people. So when you have a staff member there, because there's tons of staff, which is great, but there's really only a walkway for 1 student. So students are trying to push, they're trying to go around, and then the snow and the ice, it just kind of makes a perfect storm. But I know in one of the falls, I'm down, some clothing and whatnot, but my daughter did need some medical attention for her fall. But
Thank you.
sure, but I know that each of the times that I'm in there, multiple children are there for falls. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to board reports. Do they have a report to give tonight? Probably not too many people meeting, I guess, this month. That's odd, we didn't have any. We didn't have any boards met the last couple weeks.
Policy committee was postponed, but there was an executive session.
Okay, we did have we had an academic.
Yeah.
Did you want?
Discipline committee held an executive session
Okay,
on last Wednesday.
Okay.
That was to discuss status of
Okay.
And Learning Center and Career Tech are this Thursday.
okay. So the only ones that met were academic and
Facilities
budget.
Facilities met on the
Facilities.
17th.
Okay,
The
so
budget met, I think, right before the
Budget-
last.
budget
one.
met before it.
Last,
Okay.
It was just
yeah.
one day before that last time.
Okay, so in academic, we concentrated on high school for sure the last time, talked a lot about the course selection book that will be coming out. What else we talked about that committee?
The presentation for the investment club.
Right, the investment club, which is coming up for a vote here tonight. Okay, so somebody thinks of something I'm forgetting. And facilities, we had lots of things to talk about,
And several of them
including
are on
some
the
items
agenda
that are
tonight.
coming up
Yeah.
tonight, involving some improvements that we're looking to make in our facilities. Okay. And student report.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So not a lot going on right now. Got winter sports. Mostly looking forward to spring. Next month we have the all school production. So that's going to be February 18th and 19th at 7 and February 20th at 2. So everyone mark your calendars. Come out to watch production of 9 to 5. I've heard a lot of good things about it. People who are participating. Sounds like it's going to be really good. Today we had the PA school climate survey homeroom. So that was something to be aware of. And would also like to congratulate Future Business Leaders of America for their performance at the regional competition and qualifying for states. Will be at Hershey, PA on April 10th through 13th.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item will be a presentation from Susan Spica, who is representing unfair funding in Pennsylvania, or speaking about it anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. So I live in Shippensburg, but my day job is to work as the Executive Director of Education Voters of Pennsylvania, which is a pro-public education organization. We work in a lot of coalitions, and we are working to raise awareness about the school funding lawsuit. And so we are going around the state asking boards to pass resolutions in support of the lawsuit. So we just have a little presentation here just to give you a little background. So the lawsuit was filed in November of 2014. It was a long path, but it went to trial on November 12th this past fall in Commonwealth Court. And there are two issues at stake right now. So the first count is that the General Assembly is required by the state constitution to provide for a thorough and efficient system of public education to serve the needs of the Commonwealth. The lawsuit alleges that that we're violating the Constitution. The second count is of the Equal Protection Clause, and that we are alleging that that Pennsylvania is violating the Equal Protection Clause because by virtue of the fact of where they live, students can receive a very high quality education with a lot of resources or very few resources just because they happen to live in different places. So if you go to the next slide, there are 6 school districts and then 2 organizations that are parties in the lawsuit. So William Penn School District is down in southeastern Pennsylvania. Panther Valley and Shenandoah Valley are up in coal country. Greater Johnstown is in the center of the state, and then Wilkes-Barre is in northeastern Pennsylvania. And Lancaster is in south, right around us. So they are plaintiffs. Then we also have the NAACP State Conference and the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools. Then there are also parents from various school districts who have filed on as plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And so if you go to the next slide, it talks about the core problem. Pennsylvania contributes just 38% of what it costs to educate K-12 students, which means we rank 45th in the nation. When the state provides so little, it means that there's a super heavy reliance on property taxes, and low wealth communities can't raise the taxes on their own. So based on an actual statute that is in Pennsylvania law, Pennsylvania schools are underfunded by $4.6 billion. The majority of that funding shortfall lands in districts that educate very poor students. So there are 86% of students are in districts that are not adequately funded, but in the poorest school districts, like the poorest half, they educate 50% of the Black students in the state, 40% of the Latinx students. They reside in 20% of the school districts in the state. So the lowest wealth school districts educate the highest numbers of students of color. And what those students experience in school is very extreme in terms of deprivation, as we've heard during the school funding lawsuit. So in Johnstown, there is if you can imagine, there is a wing of they had to consolidate one of their buildings. And so they moved their 1st and 2nd grade classrooms into a hallway of a middle school that used to be the specials hallway. So they have 125 1st and 2nd graders with 1 bathroom that has 1 toilet and 1 sink. And so the teacher told this heart-wrenching story of little kids having accidents all day, every day, because they just can't hold it. And it was, we've heard story after story after story from teacher and superintendent, and basically any school official who's been on the stand has broken down and choked up. It's really, really hard. So if you go to the next slide, we can see where kind of Waynesboro falls in terms of the funding gap. So if you go to fundourschools.pa.org, the law centers have set up a website, and they have looked at the statute and state law from 2008 that measures how much money a school district should be spending per student based on the student's needs. That's the adequacy target. And when you look here, you can see that Waynesboro is a little red spot. So Waynesboro has one of the largest adequacy gaps in the entire state. Another handout I gave you shows that you rank 495th in the state for per student expenditures. And while you don't have a high tax rate down here, like a local tax rate, you also are not, you're in the bottom half, but you're not super low, right? So you are taxing, and you have raised your taxes a lot in recent years. And you get to the point where you can't continue to just raise taxes year in and year in and year in, because it becomes too much for the community. So, your adequacy gap is like $4,500 per student. You're underfunded by $20 million. If you go to the next slide, you can see what the plaintiffs are asking the courts to do. They're just asking the court to declare that the current system of funding our schools is unconstitutional, to order the legislature to cease using an inadequate funding scheme, and to order the legislature to create and maintain a funding system that will enable all students to meet state academic standards. So they're not asking for any specific remedy. They are simply asking the court to say to the legislature, this is the problem. You know, you're violating the Equal Protection Clause, you're violating the Thorough and Efficient Clause. You need to come up with a new funding system that is going to make sure that you're meeting the needs of all students. You can see if you go to the next slide, who has passed the resolution. A lot of them are small rural school districts that are, they're PARS members. Are you a member of PARS?
Yes.
And I just can't, I like love PARS. I can't say enough about the good work that PARS does in terms of advocacy for the importance of rural school districts getting what the funding they need for their kids. Because that often, I think people overlook the vast needs that rural school districts have. So those are the districts that have passed the resolutions. And so I just left you with a handout that gives more details about the school funding lawsuit, the resolution itself. And if you would like to consider it, that would be fabulous. If you do, if you would send me a copy, then we can make sure to add your name to the list. We're getting ready to put this up on the Education Voters of PA website soon. It's just in design, but that can take a little time. So I'm available, my phone number and email there if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. And just incidentally, I happened to be in Harrisburg today because in the fall, Education Voters filed right to know requests with the cyber charter schools. And I've been living with 3,500 pages of invoices. And finally, we had a press conference today in which we told everyone that over the past 2 years, cyber charter schools have spent $35 million on advertising. And so I had extra past packets, so I gave them to you, and you can just flip through and see where the money is going. Commonwealth Charter Academy just incidentally spent $3.2 million on advertising for a 3-month period. So imagine having an extra, $1.1 million to spend, and you could just spend it on advertising. I mean, that is what we're talking about. So in addition to the revenue side, we also need to look at the expenditure side, and getting the charter school costs in line could also take a big step toward having enough resources in schools for kids. So my contact information is there if you have questions. So
I have a quick question. Did
Yep.
we pass a resolution? Didn't we agree to a resolution about the fair funding a couple years ago?
Not
No.
not the
It's a different
court case,
resolution.
but it was about fair funding. I don't think it was this.
It wasn't.
It must have,
Yeah,
it was a cyber charter. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
and there were 410 school districts that have passed that resolution, and still Harrisburg will do nothing. It boggles the mind. So, but thank you for passing that one. So.
And I think if you can remind me this, I believe that there are school districts that get more funding per student from the state than we spend on one student in this district.
Probably. Yeah, I don't have that in my head, but there are many that there probably not many, but there probably are some that do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did an analysis, I think,
Yeah.
a couple years ago, and it changes a little bit each year, but I think at that time, about 30 districts in the state received more state funding from all the different channels
Mhm.
per student than we spend per student. So you think about that disparity. And I was just looking at numbers from 1920. If we spent what the average Pennsylvania school district spends per student, we'd need $19 million more.
And I just look at the academic achievement that you have in this district and think about the value that you're providing to your community. But on the other hand, you're doing bare bones budgets are not fun. And every year they get more and more and more bare bones. And you start to get to the point where there isn't enough money to really actually meet the, you know what I mean? Like building maintenance and all of that. And so we need change. The lawsuit is going to give us, I think, the opportunity to kind of break this logjam in Harrisburg and really hopefully, and Harrisburg actually has $7 billion in ESSER funding right now. And I think they're seeing just incredible state revenues coming in. So they're sitting on billions of dollars of surplus funding. I think $6 billion in state funding and $7 billion in ESSER funding. There's no reason they can't feed some of that money out to schools that are just deprived of oxygen right now and are going to start going into a budget season where we're going to start looking at cuts again when there's no need, when they're sitting on $13 billion in Harrisburg. So,
Well, I know you've been fighting this fight for quite a while. Appreciate your advocacy for it because this finally has come to being looked at seriously. Do you have an idea when this is going to be decided?
So I think that the plaintiffs are going to be done hopefully by the end of this week. And then the the defendants bring on their witnesses. They're bringing a lot of cyber charter schools in, at least so they depose them. I have no idea. I am going
Okay.
to watch. You can watch the trial. You can live stream the trial all day at Fund Our Schools PA. You can click on it and watch. I'm going to watch what these cyber charter people have to say. They're thinking they probably are going to take another 3 weeks, but then for the judge to decide, I don't think anybody thinks she's going to have this decided before June. Like, so we're kind of
Okay.
hoping we can get through budget season before she issues a decision, because I think that could
Oh, yeah.
create just chaos. So
Okay. Thanks so much for
All
coming
right.
down.
thank you.
Appreciate
Enjoy the
it.
rest of your meeting. I'm going
Thank
to take
you.
off if that's okay.
That's
Thank
okay.
you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the business items. First item is personnel. Dr. Sternerheim.
Thank you, Mrs. Harold. I'd like to direct your attention to the personnel items. In the board docs, we have transfer of support staff, change of support staff hours, additional appointments of support staff, appointments for early birds and after-school programs. In addition, we have a district retirement payment, appointment of support staff, appointment of support staff substitutes, and additional appointments to early birds and after-school programs. Also within the document, you have 2 requests for leave. So the recommendation is to approve as listed.
Motion,
Move to approve.
Second.
questions for Dr. Sternerheim? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Bus drivers, Mr. Holtzman.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We have 2 drivers for your action, one for McLeaf's and one for Shalom. Of course, as a requirement, we're required to provide transportation down Publix within 10 miles. And so that's why we have a contract with Shalom as well. So they've met the requirements for background checks, and we're asking for approval.
Motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Take your pick there, Ms. Scooser. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, some job descriptions, Dr. Sternerheim.
Thank you, Mrs. Harold. Within the board docs, you have a job description for media specialist paraprofessional, which essentially was a librarian aide. However, we added some additional responsibilities to reflect some potential new responsibilities regarding technology in our VIP program. In addition, there is another position titled essentially an educational assistant, which is a study hall monitor looking at the creation of this particular position to help assist at the senior high school. So the recommendation is to approve those job descriptions as listed.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And the Wash Investment Club, who's taking that one? Want to take that one? You're at that presentation.
Logan is in the audience. Logan did an outstanding job presenting the investment club, his investment club proposal to the academic committee last week. I'm not sure if we want to put Logan on the spot, if he has any other questions or anybody wants to ask Logan questions. He wore a suit and he is very dapper this evening as well. He wore a suit for the presentation. So, and I thought he did an outstanding job and seems to have a real passion and was able to be very articulate in his desire to create this club and to support this club. So I believe it had the blessings of the academic committee and
Correct. Mhm.
I don't know if there's any additional.
We'll just see, maybe you can keep us posted on how things go. We'd love to hear more.
Well, let's have a motion here. Do we have a motion to approve? Okay.
Second.
Does anybody have any questions for Logan since he's out on this nice cold night?
I don't have any questions, but as a banker and someone who works as a financial advisor team, I think this is really good for our students and our youth. If you could also go over what a check is and the different parts of a check, I think that would be beneficial as well. But no, I think this is a great idea and super helpful for just understanding finances and investing.
I don't remember if you said when you gave your presentation, but how many students do you think you have that are interested in joining this club? Is it a good number? Yeah. Wow, that's a good start.
Oh, yeah.
Best of luck.
we've had such a strong FBLA and business department over the years, you know, the more the merrier.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mr. Erickson's gonna tell you to come to the.
Oh.
mic.
Yeah, he's nodding.
I just see this as a continuation of that. You know, you got your advisor lined up, got the interest there, spread the word. And I assume you'd want to get started right away.
Yes,
Okay.
hopefully.
Because you're a senior, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got to get it quick.
It's already a late start, so.
Yeah.
Gotta start soon.
Anything else, Logan, from anybody?
Actually, I just want to say that I had Logan as a student 2 years ago for only 6 weeks, but I am really pleased to see how this young man has matured and taken on this responsibility. So thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Logan. I guess we're ready for the vote then. All those in favor of approving the Wash Investment Club, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, next item, crisis counselor contract. Is that Dr. Sternheim or Dr. Klein?
Sure. So what you have is a contract with Folium, Laurel Life, Affinity, whatever we're calling them this week. They have several names. This is essentially as a result of several conversations we have had indicating the need to secure counseling services for students during the course of the school day that are experiencing various degrees of, crisis-related issues. We have an outstanding school counseling team. We have social workers. But most recently, it's become more apparent to us that our students need additional services. The way the contract is written, it's obviously going to be prorated. We're going to try to get someone this school year. And so looking at funding it with the ESSER money until 2024. And at this point, we've had very successful partnerships with Laurel Life. So my recommendation is to essentially approve this contract, which would give them the opportunity to post the position and beginning the interview process. And hopefully, my mindset is to have someone at the to be shared at the middle school and the high school. There are also students that are being seen by Laurel Life counselors in school. We understand there's a waiting list, so it may be a situation where this crisis counselor is going to be working with those students that are already on the waiting list and then filling in as needed at primarily the middle school and the high school. So the recommendation is to approve the contract so we can begin looking for a candidate to fill this. Well, Affinity can, and then we would support that through another interview process.
Motion,
Move to approve.
Second.
questions? It's kind of unfortunate the need is there, but I do think the need is there. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Dr. Klein, reapproval of the health and safety plan.
All right, as I mentioned earlier, this is required in order to qualify for, I believe it's the ARP, the ESSER funds. So we have to do this every 6 months is renew it. Just to have the board reapprove it. We did make some minor changes, and that minor change had to do with some of the changes that we did to reflect the CDC and actually Department of Health changes in the return of positive cases back to work and back to school. We made a change in there, as we did here in the district a couple weeks ago, moving where if there is a positive case, they can return after 5 days, but they must wear a mask during those additional 5 days instead of being out for 10 days. That's the only change that we've really made in there that's of any major change. Everything else is pretty close. If I remember correctly, Ms. Boozer, is there anything else that I missed? And so that's it. And all we need is a reapproval of the health and safety plan from the board. Oh, may I make one other comment? I did get an email a week or so ago from a parent of some students in the district. She is a physician's assistant for WellSpan, and she aired concerns about not using masks or making them optional. So I try to share with the board whenever I have those kind of things, just to let you know that we do get communication every so often, as I've done in the past. I usually forward them to you, but I didn't on this. I it came within the past week or so, so I wanted to add that.
Okay, let's start with the motion and second, then we'll discuss.
Second.
Okay, so sticking with our same plan, pretty much the way it is. Now would be the time if anybody has any objections to that, bring up any concerns. Everybody's good with what we've been doing?
My only question is that in August, whenever we approved this, children were not being vaccinated, 5-year-olds. And so now it says those who are not vaccinated or are under the age of 12 are encouraged to wear masks. Yeah, I assume it's going to be exactly the same wording, except now those under the age of 12 actually are able to be vaccinated. So it's probably not going to make any
Yeah,
difference
that's a good
right.
to
point.
change the wording. So I'm fine with it staying this way.
Yeah, we can make that if the board would prefer to have that, those that are not vaccinated are encouraged to wear a mask. You know, we're not requiring it.
Well, that's
We can do that. if the
good
board
catch there,
approves.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's, yeah, because it's, the law's changed.
Yeah,
Right.
the
Or the
laws
op-
changed.
Or the
so-
options have
Yeah.
changed, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good with that? So then, Dr. Royer, your motion would include that change?
Yes, sure. I'll move
Okay
to
with that?
approve, pending, with the, change that Mrs. Zimmerman recommended regarding the, vaccination and age of those encouraged to wear masks. So it'll just state those who are not vaccinated are encouraged to wear masks.
Yes,
And that's under A, 2A.
yes.
And the second, that, Mr. Marvin?
I think that was me.
Are
I'll
you good
second
with
that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other concerns, comments, questions? If not, all those in favor of accepting this, please say aye.
I
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. All right, next item. Oh, you again, MOU with Franklin and Marshall.
Yeah, this is one you've had several years. It is a memorandum of understanding with the Franklin Marshall College Counselor Program. They've had this program for quite a few years, and I know the district had it before I got here, and it's actually the only district I didn't have to start it in. So, but it's a great program. It's been very well accepted. Those college counselors do a great job. They do more than what we really think they do. So all it is, the only thing that's changed over the last either 2 years maybe is that it went from they pay half and we pretty much pay half, but I think it changed. We went from 25,000 to 30,000. And that's it. But that's only, I think the only change I've seen over the
Right,
last
that's,
couple
I
of
think they
years.
made that adjustment a couple years ago when they had some changes in funding on their end. So
Yeah,
we went
I
from
thought
25 to
so.
30. Historically, it was 25 for many years.
So what kind of like evaluation do we have of that? Like, I mean, do we have, are people doing some kind of a formal evaluation or see what they
No,
say?
Actually, that's a good point. I think the college does do an evaluation of the program by the numbers and things that they have, data that they collect, but we don't do an internal. You know, maybe a survey or some sort of look at the numbers also.
They did, I believe it was the end of the second year. And Will was the council at that time, it's not that it's now.
Mhm.
Like how many
Right,
students
that's
she'd
right.
seen
Mhm,
and how
right.
many, the one statistic that was interesting was how many students, at point of college.
Mhm, right,
She had
right.
worked
That
with
was
it.
an emphasis, as I
Yeah, that
recall.
she
Yeah.
had worked with. So I mean, I think it's possible
could
that
do
for
that,
her to
yeah.
put together.
We can set that up. I believe it's in May and we
Yeah.
did it like the person stays in the position for 2 years.
Right.
So it's probably not a yearly, like, so this will be Jenna's last year in this role. So we would ask for a presentation. I know one of the new features that, again, it's not necessarily associated with this program, but the amount of our students that can actually get accepted for college at the high school without an application fee. And so that was also part of the
the emphasis on like how, like they were getting college recruiters in and meeting with the students. I remember my son came home and he said, oh, by the way, I got accepted at Millersville today. I was like, what? Because I did it during 5th period. So, I mean, I mean, he had all his paperwork and everything, but it was a wonderful opportunity in terms of like not having to go through a real formalized application process and then also waiving those fees. So I think that was part of the presentation, like how many fees were able to be waived. And I know parents are very appreciative of that. So we can definitely set that as part of the agenda for perhaps May.
And also, some of the parents I've talked to, I believe was highly involved with the tuition help, looking at.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big help.
Financial
when I-
assistance, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything I've heard is that the people we've had have done a good job. I'm just looking at it from an accountability perspective, since we're putting $30,000.
We
into it.
started like, and I don't know, prior to that, we like have a wall where we try to recognize where students are planning on attending, or we talk about what, you know, they'll provide updates in places where students have been accepted. So, but we can definitely do that report in May.
Okay.
Dr. McCallum, you want to note that? Thank
Okay.
you.
Dr. Klein, I looked it up. It looks like 16-17 was the first year. It was actually 24,000. I thought it was 25 also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah, it was 24,000 back then.
Okay.
I don't know when it switched up.
Okay, do we have a motion then to approve this MOU?
I so move. Second.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks. On to the course selection guide. Dr. Sternheim.
Okay, this continues to be a working document, although I believe we had a draft presented to you 2 weeks ago. The academic committee did review last week as well. We met with some individuals today. There may be some additional changes. I believe we're good with the leadership class. And then we're looking at the addition of Spanish 5 and French 5. I do have information regarding Spanish 5, but do not have anything at this point for French 5, but we will still look at, you have that. We could look at adding those to the course selection guide as well. And then that's it, according to Dr. McCallum, that is it. So the recommendation is to approve the course selection guide with the understanding that we will be looking at adding Spanish 5 and French 5. And then what we would do, and I don't know, from a new board member perspective, students will be making selections, and then based on their selections, more than likely not every single course will run. We'd have to hire more teachers for that, but what we'll do is we'll then make a decision from a budgetary perspective based on the number of students, and in some places, a number of classes will be running on the same topic or same subject, as opposed to some classes may not run if there's a lack of numbers.
Now I want to give Dr. Callum a kudo and her counseling office. One of the things I was hearing in the community is that with some of the scholarships that were out there, the kids that were graduating early we're not hearing of some of them. And I've seen on the website now that they are listed there. So kudos to you for getting that communication out for those kids that used early.
Our college advisor from Franklin Marshall worked very closely with the counseling office on getting that.
Another good investment right there. So,
Yeah.
Dr. McCallum, not to make another suggestion, I was looking under school counselors and careers, maybe our college counselors should be listed in that block.
We will, I believe, know who our new person's going to be in April.
Okay.
So I can ask, yeah, I agree with you. I
Add
can
it
ask
maybe-
her if I believe they already hired the person.
Yeah.
So I will make a note.
I'll check my emails. I heard.
She told me that the new person is going to be starting to transition with her in April. So. Any other questions for me?
Anybody else watching? Okay, I don't think we have any motion.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, all those in favor of accepting the course selection guide, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Capital Reserve transfer, Mr. Holtzman.
Thank you, ma'am. Fund 32 has historically been the place where we put money for future technology purchases, typically infrastructure related. And of course, Mr. Erickson can always jump in anytime because this is typically where he's spending a lot of infrastructure funds out of. Years ago, it's probably been at least 8 to 10 years, we were trying to go back and figure that out. We put about $200,000 into that fund. We've been using that fund gradually over the last 8 to 10 years. We're down to about $24,000. So to continue that process of being able to upgrade that infrastructure when we need to do it, what we'd like to do is take $200,000 out of our general fund and put it into Fund 32. It kind of protects that to make sure that we have those funds to maintain our infrastructure despite any other budget issues that might come to light throughout the year. Now, Fund 32 is a little protected. I always like to remind everybody that when you put money into Fund 32, you do limit what you can use with those funds. You actually cannot pull them back out to your general fund. So they have to stay in Fund 32, but you can use it for 3 primary reasons. Capital improvements, which includes technology, or you could even use it for any capital improvement. So if you wanted to replace a roof, windows, things of that nature, theoretically, you could use that as well. That's certainly an approved item. You can actually use it to buy buses. We contract our buses, so it doesn't really apply to us, but we could if we needed to. And the third item is you could actually make debt payments. So we do have bond debt. So again, as a backup, if we so needed to do and access those funds for whatever purpose, we could use that to pay towards bonds. So you do still have a lot of flexibility, but it does kind of protect those funds a little bit. So we're asking basically to move it from the general fund into Fund 32. It does not obligate you for future purchases, by the way. I should always mention that. We always do that as part of the budgeting process itself.
Motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any other questions on this one that I'm sure is new for several people, except for the budget committee? We heard about it.
But I just want to say that this was brought to the budget committee, and the budget committee, did ask questions and did recommend that we do this.
Thanks, Mrs. Zimmerman. Anybody else? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Okay. On to tax time almost. Mr. Holtzman, Act 1.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Act 1 is a process that dates back to about 2006. This is prior to 2006, I should say that school boards had virtually unlimited taxing authority. If the school district wanted to raise the taxes 20 mils, it could probably do that if it so desired. Obviously, another board could change that, but certainly that board could raise the taxes in virtually an unlimited manner. And there were some other little caveats out there that had limited some of that, but not too much. So back in 2006, the state came out and said they passed legislation called Act 1. Effectively, what this does is state that the board needs to do one of 2 things by a certain date each year. The date changes. This year, I believe it's the 27th of this month. I'm reading that correct? Trying to find it on here fast. 27th. So the board would either have to, 1, present a budget that says you need to raise the taxes higher than the inflationary index, which is the Act 1 index, or approve a resolution, which is what we have tonight, that says that the board will not raise the taxes above the Act 1 index. It does not require you to raise taxes, and it's not an actual obligation, or it's not, basically telling the community that you're going to raise taxes. It just says that you can't raise the taxes more than this inflationary number next year. So that's what we're recommending based on what we see in the budget at this point for next fiscal year, which is 22-23.
How many districts go above the index, do you think? How many districts would approve going above that? Give me an idea. I know. actually,
I've seen
talked to a
some
couple
data before.
people.
I really don't want to throw a number out there, but there's some districts out there that historically always put a budget forward that requires more taxes than what the Act 1 index is. And a lot of them get that approved, but then never use it. And I'm going to pick a number out of the sky. Maybe 1/3 of the districts or more actually go out and state every year, we might need to go ahead and get more than the Act 1 index, but they never use that. They just want that flexibility. There's a school of thought that would say that as a school district, as a financial person, I would tell you, I want the most flexibility in case something really happens. But to present a budget to the community that says, hey, I need you to raise taxes next year by 6 mils or 7 mils, there's a perception that comes along with that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, some districts, it's normal. They do it every year. They pass a budget that's much higher. Some districts do the resolution, little mix in between.
What is the Act 1 index?
Oh, I'm sorry, it is 4.7%, quite high. It's a lagging number. It's a combination of two indices at the state level. They use that on like a 36-month lag basis, but it's 4.7%. We anticipate it staying at that rate or even going maybe a little bit higher over the next 2 years. So that would be about 4.77 mils for us. Rounded, that's about $1.25 million, I think, somewhere around there, $1.2 million, if we raised it to that.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the 4.7%.
Other questions?
Second.
Oh, we got a second? Okay, sorry. Okay, so do we have other questions? I don't know that we've ever agreed to go beyond the limit. I don't think so. Okay. Just a little history. That doesn't mean we couldn't, but.
Right.
Okay, if there are no other questions, all those in favor of accepting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Bridge repairs, Mr. Holtzman.
Yes, ma'am. Earlier, we heard in some discussions during public comment about bridges and some of the conditions with walking over there between the two different buildings, especially with it's icy. And certainly that is an area of concern that we have at times. But we also have the bridges as well that have been a concern. The bridge conditions, we call it a north and south bridge just to differentiate. There's really no names on the bridges, but in terms of the property, the south bridge right now is closed for vehicle pedestrian only. Because there's been some structural issues underneath of it. It's safe for people walking over, but it's not safe to take over vehicles at this time. The North Bridge it needs some serious repair. It has not really been addressed probably for the last at least 20 years or longer. The engineer that actually came out and did the study on this probably about 2 years ago or so, 2.5 years ago, that was one of his actual first projects when he got started in the business 35 years ago, give or take, something along those lines. Sorry, Mr. Black calls me tomorrow and he says that's the wrong year, but so effectively what we did is we looked at this as two different projects. The facilities committee has reviewed this probably for at least 2 years, if not maybe going on 3 years at this point. The decision was, let's just go ahead and keep the southern bridge in the state it is in. Again, it's safe for people to walk over it. And we're not going to do anything with that one. We have posted signage up there to keep vehicles off. But for the North Bridge, what we're recommending is to go ahead and repair that. So the unfortunate part is anytime you touch a bridge, especially something that's over some water in Pennsylvania, even though that does not necessarily have much water in it most days, it becomes expensive. So we have to go through a whole process with DEP typically. We have to go through the engineering to basically have the specs put out so that we can bid this project, because it's going to be a project that we have to go out to bid. It'll involve prevailing wage. We'll have to pay the union scale wages for this project. Anything over $25,000 requires that in Pennsylvania. That will apply here as well. So again, we have a bridge that really does need to be repaired. It's not really just the bridge. It's also really the abutments and the supports down below. If you see those areas, there's really a lot of washout just because once in a while when you have some nice flooding into that area, you have some washout areas down through there. But again, it's still safe right now. We can still use it, but this is something that would get us in shape for about another 20 to 30 years. So all we're asking, I don't want to say all we're asking, but what we're asking at this stage is to have those engineering specifications drawn up and all the appropriate permits obtained so that ultimately we can go out to bid and then see what the cost is to repair the bridge.
Even the, what we're asking for today is unbelievably high in my opinion, but that's what it is. That's what it is. So do we have any, let's have a motion first of all. A motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, questions? Yep.
So when you say vehicles on the South Bridge, you mean bicycles?
No, gators and things of that nature, tractors, things that we would typically would take across there for mowers and things of that
Okay, so
nature.
they're using the other bridge.
Correct.
So, I mean, do we need two bridges?
It's more convenience. I don't think we absolutely need to have two bridges, but it's more convenience to get to the for the middle school. We do have people that come down through there and walk up and down and use
Right.
that parking lot, but I'm not aware of any requirements to have the southern bridge.
So does the middle school I don't know this, they assign kids to take certain bridges to avoid like,
I think some of the kids use the southern one basically because the buses kind of wrap around the way they're parked around the high school. So they'll often use the southern bridge to walk up because it's convenient, or come down. It's a little bit closer and more convenient than walking to the north bridge and then come.
good idea to consider, I don't know, the possibility of bus. I never thought about it, because most kids haven't always done.
This proposal also says towards the end that will be open for acceptance until December 17th, 2021, unless changed by us in writing.
Right. We believe he'll go ahead and extend that for us as well. Sometimes these get a little delayed, and I think he recognizes that. He's worked with, school districts and committees, and he understands that things sometimes get a little delayed.
I just wanted that
Sure.
clarified before.
Yeah, and that is, we have been talking about this like forever.
Yeah.
So,
That's why.
yeah, that's probably, yeah, exactly.
Yep, he has worked us, and I think that's probably a little bit why there are some ranges on there too. Certainly.
I'm just thinking, like, if we got that walkway put in off the walking path, those kids, if they came over, wouldn't they go that way when they go down the Southern Bridge?
They probably would go the southern bridge if we had the walkway, but they could go on either one, obviously.
Yeah,
depending on where they
just
wanna go.
thinking of I don't know, Dr. Roy, you were asking about the need for two bridges, but I know
Well, I
they
would
would use that
certainly-
one.
I mean, I know it's not on the agenda and I would still recommend that, and again, maybe I need to facility committee meeting to put that walkway in. So we the walk, also can talk about that.
Well, it's on the hopper. It
Okay.
should be soon, right? Aren't we just waiting for?
Well, that one actually, we did put on hold, and I think it's maybe one of those items we could talk about again in facilities committee, but there was some discussion with the borough as well. I think
Oh,
the-
that's
the
right,
borough
that's
is
right.
possibly looking at some infrastructure walkability type funding. So we wanted to talk to them a little bit to see what options they might have. It could be a joint project, which might be able
That's a
to
great idea.
work together on that project. to
Okay,
do
but
that.
yeah, that comes up like at every
Yeah.
meeting. That's why I was thinking that, but you're right. I forgot about that.
No, no,
part.
it's okay.
Okay.
It would make sense to me, though, that only one of those bridges would be accessible to gators, et cetera, and the others would be walkways. Why do we have to have gators crossing all of these? We just need to make them safe for pedestrians.
Okay, anything else? All right, if not, all those in favor of accepting this beginning to look at the bridge, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Boundary curbing.
Sure. Sorry, you can tell we had a facilities committee meeting a week ago.
Yeah, it's Mr.
Um,
Holtzman's show for the rest of these items. Actually, all the rest of the items.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
it's
know,
only you.
it's,
Okay.
We could blame the facilities committee too.
Hey, we're happy. We're
Just
getting
throwing
things
that option
done
out.
here.
Just be glad they decided on it.
So Maui Elementary, the bus loop area on Maui Elementary has a curb there. And unfortunately, that curb has been rubbed down significantly, primarily by tires from vehicles, primarily by heavier vehicles, typically painted yellow. And what happens is over time is that they have really kind of taken that concrete out. But what we found was that the rebar in the concrete is much closer to the outside surface of that concrete than it really should have been. So it should have been back in a couple more inches. But the downside is and again, buses rub, that's just what happens. And it's a very tight loop, I would also mention too. I think it was, I want to say the buses were short of that, but I don't think they were, but it's a very tight loop. So anyway, we have rebar that's sticking out of that curbing. So Mr. Adams and some of the maintenance team have gone up there at times and cut it out so that it doesn't poke tires and flatten any of the vehicles that are running the buses. But it is in bad shape all the way around this loop. It is in bad shape on the other parent loop too, but that curbing is so short, I would say, that we're going to look at some other process over there because it's just not worth repairing that because there's not much of a curb there due to the way the pavement is designed. So we went out to look at a couple different quotes. We really only received one quote back, but it's the same company that we have used for many concrete projects here across the district here in the last year or so. But what we would do is we'd have to replace that curbing as well as dig out the blacktop and redo the blacktop against that curbing area after the curbing is done. So
They're There's no risk right now of any.
There's no
tires or
risk at this
anybody
point because
walking.
we keep trimming it back. They keep going in there and looking at whenever they see pieces sticking out. I mean, you can see
Okay.
that there are
Enough.
pieces in there now, but certainly you can, once in a while they get bumped, and when they get bumped, they poke out. So we go in and cut them out. And yeah. So it's just an unfortunate situation that's deteriorated over time.
Second. Other questions? Did actually have Mr. Adams had a ton of pictures and stuff that we could
did.
look at in the facilities, so. It's good. Okay, no other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, so somebody was talking about things that we've been talking about forever. And my question would be, we've been talking about forever getting the Maui playground fixed, the back playground. Any news about that from facilities?
We had a long discussion about that. I would actually suggest you come to the meeting. It's very expensive. It's a very expensive proposition. It's still being looked at. It seems like we're pretty limited on how to fix it, and the fix is like really expensive. So at the last meeting, we decided to wait on that one and not go forward with it at this point, but it's still in the list. So come on down the next meeting.
I was wondering, if maybe, given the fact that, I was gonna bring that up under board comments, just because I believe when the playground engineers came out, Barb Martin was still the principal. That was probably 2015. That they came out and made that recommendation, so that's at least 7 years. And the fact that the ESSER money is to be used for students, and we're encouraging students to be outside that more now
Mhm.
because of all the issues with pandemic with ESSER money. For any of that, for improving the quality of the playground.
I guess I haven't seen it used specifically for that. I'm certainly always willing to ask and go out to our,
I just wonder because
but-
we were able to do that at the daycare.
were you able to do that for the
Yeah,
daycare?
improving health and wellness
Okay.
through playground. So just a thought.
That's a
No, I
good
can
idea.
certainly pursue and
Uh-huh.
ask.
Yeah,
I can
good
certainly
idea.
ask the question. I haven't seen it applied for the schools yet, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. There's always a potential to kind of look at a potential supplant situation too, a little bit, where we could possibly use the funds for another item.
Health and PE and recess being part of the curriculum.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's board policy that we require recess. So I think that the fact that we require and it becomes, part of our daily schedule, it's not like a optional thing.
Sure.
I think it may.
Good point.
Okay, good.
Well, Mr. Holzman, can you explain it a little more so that the new members know what we're talking about?
Sure, of course. Sorry, I was just writing a note. So the back playground area behind Maui, a very large area up there for that school. It's a great location for play, but it's a lousy location for water runoff. So just by default where that sits, and there's a field behind there that has a higher elevation. So the water literally comes down and just grabs the mulch and just takes it right out of the playground area and pulls it right into the grass areas and away from where it needs to be for the students. So we've had that problem for years. We put mulch down, it washes out. We put mulch down, it washes out. It also, of course, makes the mulch break down much faster, of course, because of the water issues that we have there. In the wintertime, it becomes a bit of a problem because things tend to want to freeze there. So that mulch will freeze a little bit as well and become much harder than what it should be because of the water runoff into that area. So realistically, the goals, I think some of the engineers were stating was they would have to create large swales to get the water and move the water away from the playground itself and push it further out onto our property. There's certainly a lot of area for that water to be dissipated. A huge hill there, that water to go on to, but we do need to get it away from that playground.
And what was it? What was the estimate the last time we had an engineer looking at it?
Last time we had somebody look at it was in the upper 80s, 87, 88,000, somewhere in that ballpark. And that was probably back to when Dr. Royer mentioned 7 years ago.
A little less than the bridge.
A little less than the bridge. Yeah, not an
Well,
inexpensive project.
Well, I realize it's expensive, but I also think that it's not a good situation, and I'm not so sure it's a safe situation. And we've been putting it off for a really long time. I would like to see us, do some more, I don't know, get some more.
Well, it
estimates.
has been looked at. I mean, Jeff's been out there to look at it. And why don't you come to the meeting? Come to the next meeting. It's in the evening. You don't have to get up.
We need to go to the facilities committee.
Go to facilities, yes.
It's a party, Mrs. Sullivan. You should come.
Okay, think about that. But we would talk about it even if you're not there, but it would just be easier for you to do that, so. Okay, all right. Where are we here? We got the,
Number
we
13.
already voted on that. Okay, so we're down to the Fairview Comfort Room.
Ms. Kuzer, did we vote on?
Yeah.
Yep, we're good. Perfect. Good. Just double check, didn't update. Okay. So Fairview Elementary Comfort Rooms. So we've expanded the Inspire program over with our elementaries. It's now K-5. There is a comfort room in that area now, but the only other comfort room that they have is kind of down the hall and away from that area. So from a supervision issue, if they need to use both rooms, it becomes a bit of an issue at times now with staffing because they need to have the staff right there by the room. And whereas if you have 2 staff here and you have 2 staff down there, or at least you're 1 and 1, it becomes a bit of a management issue. So the recommendation now that we've not only expanded the program, but we have that need is to put 2 more comfort rooms in that same room. Just put them right side by side and then put a wall up to separate that area from the therapy area. So we're looking at basically just some minor construction in that area. We'd also put some carpeting or padding in there. I don't think we've quite figured out exactly what we're going to put in there yet. We're leaning towards carpeting. We have to replace some other carpeting that's in the existing comfort room. It's just become soiled to the point that it can't be cleaned anymore. So again, based on the program and the expansion there, we're asking to be able to add the 2 additional comfort rooms.
Clarify what.
Sure, and this is when I get to defer to Dr. Sterner Hine.
Okay, so I knew that was coming. So within the Inspire program, essentially a comfort room is a de-escalation room. Like if a student is heightened in terms of whether it's frustration, anger, just very profound sadness, where we can we will be with the student in that same room, but they're isolated from the peer group and essentially able to have an outlet. However, it may look for a period of time with an adult to help process how they're
So
feeling.
one student, one staff in that
Isolated.
room to try to calm down. Okay.
Typically a master level therapy.
It's either master level therapist or the behavior monitor.
Okay.
So, and yeah, we have one. We have one in every building. We made that investment a number of years ago, recognizing that students across the district at a period of time may have the need for a comfort room.
So with more students in there, 2 additional comfort rooms is a good idea.
Yeah, and so what we added the K1 and 2 program, but also that the access to the other room with the recognition that you have 4 staff members was outside of the Inspire classroom. So what would have to happen if that we had 2 students that needed a place to de-escalate, they were actually leaving the Inspire classroom and were in a hallway. So.
So is this, in addition to the existing comfort room for this other Fairview students? So we'll now
Yes.
have 3?
And this is only Inspire.
So we'll have 3 in the building.
We will have
That-
3 in Inspire.
3 Inspire, and then
And
1 for
one-
the second level and 1 for the first level, which are existing.
So we'll have 4 comfort. 5.
3 in the Inspire classroom area and 2 in the building.
How
We-
large are these rooms? What's the square footage?
Square footage, I'm gonna try and do this top of my head. I would say probably maybe 5 by 5 or 6 by 6. They're not overly large. They're probably just large enough for some of the students to lay down if they feel the need to. But they're not very large rooms. And then the height is the height of the classroom itself. They typically have a half door. So it's a half door that can be opened out. There's no locks or anything on it. We're not allowed to do that, of course. And then typically the interior is all padded, usually with either carpeting and then heavy padding behind it, or sometimes actual pads like you would see in a wrestling room or something along those lines. It all depends on what's going on with those and how easy that material is to break apart.
Maybe you should look at that, like at that interlocking rubber flooring that they use now. Like use it in the infant rooms now at daycare because it's more easily washable.
Sure.
Carpet's like really, really bad. no terms, so that way it could be washed and damage could be replaced.
That's a good point. Yeah, we've looked at some of those ideas. I know we often go back and we defer to the building principal and to the staff using the rooms. I know there's been some issues with, depending on the material, people will pick it apart, and then once they get a couple pieces off, then, we have that problem with those issues. But it is a challenge trying to find the right material. I think that's why we put a little bit in there. We're estimating 11,000 because we just didn't know exactly how we were going to line
You
it.
can also get that rubber, bring it. I'm just concerned
No,
about the sanitary part of carpeting.
Yeah, the pads would be much, much better. And if we have to replace them, I guess we could go down that path.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Dr. Lord.
Thing to keep in mind is that, even though there are those number of resources there in that building and other buildings, it is a good thing that some of these kids can de-escalate outside their class. And then the educational process continue.
We had a motion, Ms. Cruiser? No, we did not have a motion. Okay, do we have a motion on that?
Move to approve.
Second. Anything else? We vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Playground equipment installation. Not the equipment, installation.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Holzman.
Sure. The PTO from Fairview has reached out and they want to do a fundraiser for new playground equipment in the back. They're asking for district support and commitment to installing it once they raise the funds and purchase the equipment. So we took the proposed equipment and took the specs themselves. We went to one of our local contractors that we've used for many projects and had them provide an estimate for you. So what we did is we put together a draft letter that could obviously be modified at any time by the board for your approval to, I guess, to take action on, and then if approved, send it back to the PTO to show the support that the district would do the installation once they buy the equipment.
What would the price tag estimated be on that?
It was about $4,350, $4,350 is what the contractor estimated.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank
Thank you.
you. Okay, financials, Mr. Holtzman.
Yes, ma'am. For your discussion and action, we have cafeteria bills as well as general fund bills and requisitions. And then we also have December exonerations, and those are for, I believe, occupation taxes. Let me double check. Yes, for occupation taxes. So we're asking for approval.
Do you have any questions on anything they saw in the financials? Motion?
Move to approve.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Clayton comments.
One, I want to thank Susan Pica for presenting the fair fundings information that she did tonight, but also to just kind of capture one comment she did make and highlight it, is that she mentioned our district and our achievement for the amount of money we spend. And that wouldn't happen if it weren't for our teachers, our staff, our people that work here. And I have said it, and I know, I'm sure Karen and any other board and Cindy have been on in the interview when I came here and other times I've interviewed, that I believe this district has the best staff I've ever seen. Any of the 4 districts I've been associated with, or 3 districts, however many, I forget. I couldn't keep a job. So but 4 places that I've been, I think we have the best staff of any. So, and I've always said that. I think that's why we're getting better bang for our buck.
I did have one comment. Talking the same thing about the funding. When you think about it, again, we do a phenomenal job with the funds that we have. However, if we think about that, the average school district in Pennsylvania has $19 million more to spend. Think about it from the economic benefits to this community, about what $19 million would do in this community. Because most of it would be spent here locally. We'd be hiring additional staff, be able to compensate people differently, obviously be able to possibly hire people with full-time benefits in many cases. That money would just have a tremendous effect positively in this community. So again, from a fairness perspective, I think it would be great to see those funds in this area.
Well, I thought it was interesting too that she listed on there the, wasn't really discussion, but the Philadelphia area, some people from Philadelphia, because you would think they would be the ones getting all the money. Maybe that's a misperception on my part.
Depends where. And you'll see it where there's inner city where there's some lack of that funding, but there's also the very poor rural areas, and we tend to forget that too. We
Mhm.
have both those areas that don't always get fair funding. So it all depends on the situation.
Yeah, just piggyback back on that, and to second your motion about the good leadership and the people in the district. I toured middle school, Summitview, the middle school and the high school, and was really impressed with the leadership in those buildings. You know, one of the things that Dr. McCallum and I talked about was the fact that because of the funding, the lack of the funding, when high school students are trying to make choices for higher level courses, right? There are not a lot of students may be able to register. We talked about that earlier about if you don't have enough numbers in those classes, you can't run those classes because of the budget. If you increase that and bring more funding in, then our kids could have more options and be more competitive, not with just the students in the state, around the state, but students, not just around the country too, but students international, around the world as well. So that's how that funding could help.
Yeah. And I know with the law itself, I mean, it just seems right that it doesn't matter, you know, that certainly a community can raise as much money as it wants, but if the state is giving a certain amount per student, it shouldn't matter whether they're in the city of Philadelphia, in Waynesboro, or out in the middle of Armstrong County. Each student should be allotted a certain amount of money, and that does seem like fair funding. And whether those communities raise more money, that's certainly up to them. But I think that's what all this fair funding's been about, because it isn't that way. Right?
Anyone else, either Clayton Cabinet or board? Any comments to make here tonight? Okay, if not, we will be adjourning and going into executive session and for contractual issues. So we will not be returning. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.